This is the Bottom Shot Podcast.
Pulvereri is up high. They come out of turn number 4. Stutter between the turns. The fans come to their feet.
It is Ted Christopher still in command. Keith Rocco right there on his back bumper.
Bringing Stafford Motor Speedway's past and present together.
They are side by side running for the finish line. It's a photo finish.
Deep into turn number 3. He goes in deeper than most. Christopher is in trouble. It is Keith Rocco to slingshot to the bottom, and he'll take down the win.
A Stafford Motor Speedway production where we will hear from the personalities from the past and present that found success on the legendary half-mile oval.
The scoreboard shows goose eggs as they wait. It's Pulvereri. He wins it by inches over Richie Evans in the Spring Sizzler.
Unbelievable chain of events.
Now, here are your hosts, Paula Root and Kyle Rickey.
Welcome to the Stafford Motor Speedway and another edition of the Bottom Shot Podcast here on Stafford Speedway social channels. Kyle Rickey joined by Paula Root. And, well, Paul, we're getting closer to a new season. I think under 100 days is what I saw now until we get to opening day weekend and Spring Sizzler.
I think we're in the 90s now, so it's exciting. And we got a lot of great stuff cooking at Stafford here, and I think we're going to have a big season. Really excited to get going. It's cold, and I'm ready for summer to hit and to be back on track.
I feel like there's major announcements about every week concerning the 2021 season. But let's kind of update folks on the big announcement from the last show, and that's the SRX Series coming to Stafford in June. Tickets went on sale and quickly evaporated.
Yeah,
they sold out pretty quick.
A couple hours. We sold at 35% capacity just to be. I know we're optimistic that it's going to increase as it gets a little bit closer to the event. So we did sell out our maximum capacity at the moment. So if additional tickets do become available, we'll definitely sell them. And if anyone who's interested can sign up for a list online and be the first to be told about the additional tickets. So,
and those that want to learn more about the event, watch our last podcast. We had Ray Evernham on, who's instrumental in putting the division together. That will include Tony Stewart, who's also part of the development of the series, and Helio Castroneves, Bobby Labonte, Bill Elliott, just some of the names that will be here at the Stafford Motor Speedway in June. A lot of talk online as well on Twitter with some current NASCAR Cup Series stars that at least want to show up. Whether they do or not, we'll see.
You never know who's going to be at that event. It's going to be a fun one.
I know Kyle and Denny and some others are hoping to be a part of that event. So stay tuned to all the Stafford channels for future updates. Also, the return of the Senators Cup last year here at the Stafford Motor Speedway. Going to grow a little bit more this year with a new sponsor. Yeah,
a North American motor car has joined us to sponsor the Senators Cup, as well as SK a weekly contingency bonus. So originally it was supposed to be an extra 10 laps, but with COVID and everything, we just kept it at 40. So it's going to change back to the additional 10 for this event. So it's going to be a 50-lap SK race in August, which I think is going to be really important for the teams that are in the championship hunt. That's kind of the stretch where things really get sorted out when who's a contender. Some teams will fall off the map just because that's the throes of it, of the season. So that extra 10 laps, I think, is going to become a factor.
An extra 5 miles can make a huge difference. You mentioned the SKs. We touched on it the last show. They are also going to be a part of the SRX event here at Stafford, cool. An all-star event.
Yeah, and that's going to be sponsored by tickmike.com. It's going to be the first ever SK All-Star event, which the format's going to be cool. We're gonna lock in the top 15 in points, as well as any past champions, and if any SRX drivers choose to want to join the field. So I'm hearing that you could see a couple past champions join the show. If you look back on the champions, I mean, you got Priest, Woody, Mike Sr., you never know about him. Bo Gunning, there's just a couple of drivers that could join the All-Star event. And the night before is going to be interesting because it's going to be the top 15 at the end of that event. So there could be a couple guys on the bubble racing into the show.
And the night before also includes the Twisted T80.
Yep.
Is that part of that whole big weekend here at the Stafford Motor Speedway? So it's going to be a great 2021 season. A lot more announcements forthcoming as we are within 100 days now of opening day.
Countdown is on.
It is. Although it was on last year and it kind of got derailed, but I'm confident 2021 will be different.
Well, it's got to be.
I hope so. I hope so. Let's talk about our guest today. Throughout the summer months here at Stafford Motor Speedway, the race week actually starts on Monday night, so it's cool to start the week on Monday here at Stafford on the mini mile and end it on the half mile here on our Friday night weekly series program. But our guest today, instrumental in getting the Monday night Wild Thing Karting here going 16 years ago now, and talking about, of course, Wade Gagner, the man behind everything that happens here on Monday night and the development of a lot of drivers we see on Friday nights.
That's what I was going to say. I think this is going to be a great guest. I've known Wade for a long time. How describe Wade as the perfect guy for the karts. He's great with the kids. He's great with the karts. He's a fabricator. He builds them all himself. I'm excited to talk about how it all came together. He was a driver at first. He became a kart promoter and builder, and he's helped a lot of great, talented drivers progress up the ranks, which I'm excited to chat with him.
They run 7 divisions here on Monday nights. If you've never seen them, fantastic racing on the mini mile here at the Stafford Motor Speedway between the months of May and September. The man behind it, Wade Gagner, joins us here in a moment on the Bottom Shot Podcast. Back here on the Bottom Shot Podcast at the Stafford Motor Speedway, and as promised before the break, the man behind Monday Night Wild Thing Karts here at the Stafford Motor Speedway, the program that has groomed and developed so many drivers here on Friday nights. Wade Gagner joins us. Wade, welcome to the Bottom Shot Podcast.
Yep, I'm glad to be here. Hi, Paul.
Thanks for
Yeah, it's good to be here, and finally we'll get the story out.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming out. We're excited to have you on the podcast. I think to start off, kind of talk us through how you got involved in the sport in general. I know a lot of people know you drove for a long time, but kind of get us, from the beginning, even as a kid, if you got involved at what age?
It was something that my dad was a motorcycle rider, and he hill climbed and motocrossed, and so he always loved racing and would bring me to Riverside. And I think, if I remember correctly, my first time coming to Stafford, we used to go to Riverside, and my first time coming to Stafford, and we came here, and I remember watching the cars race here, and I can't remember who it was in a coupe, spun around, the car burst into flames, the guy jumped out of the car, and, I'm a 7-year-old kid, and it was just like, I was like in awe. I was like, once I came to Stafford, I didn't want to go anywhere else. I just wanted to come to Stafford. And so I came here as a kid, going to Stafford with my father and his friends, because they even ran some Sunday shows back then. And so we came to some of the Sunday shows. And but he was big into camping. My dad was an avid camper. We would go to Rhode Island every weekend and camp. But all I wanted to do was go racing. So it became a little bit of a problem as I got older and I got closer to the age of wanting to go racing. And, of course, I wanted to race nowhere else but Stafford. And I was in high school, and there was a gentleman that used to race here, Bob Wickup. Yeah. And he used to race here for a long time in a 6-cylinder Sportsman division. And I went over, and I used to go over as a kid. I used to, as soon as I got my license, I would go over there just to watch him work on his car or whatever. But anyways, he had an old Valiant beside his garage that he used to race, and I purchased the car without telling my dad. I arranged to have it dropped off at the house, put it in the garage. To my dad's dismay, he came home and saw it parked in his garage and was very unhappy that I bought a race car. So it was me and, of course, kids in the neighborhood. None of us at that time, I was the only one old enough to get in the pits.
Oh, wow.
So we built the car over the winter, and I proceeded to come here to Stafford, and I believe at that time, that was 1978, and I was 16 and I had to fight with my mother to sign the permission form just to let me race here at Stafford. She was adamant I wasn't going to race, but I talked her into it, and she let me come race here. My dad towed the truck down here on his tow truck. He owned a garage, so my dad towed his tow truck down here. And just to show me that he didn't want anything to do with his race car, he wore like a Hawaiian shirt, nice hat, nice pants, and dropped the car and walked up into the grandstand.
He didn't even hang out in the pits.
So it was kind of funny at that time because it was only me and one of other of my buddies that could come in the pits at the time. My other buddies would hang outside the fence, and they were, what's going on? What's going on? How you doing it? And I wasn't even 120 pounds soaking wet. And the steering wheel was this big, 13-inch wide tires, a 4,200-pound car, no power steering, no power brakes, and most of the time I go into corners, I would actually have my knees wedged against the steering wheel to hold it in the corner. I'd go in there, turn it, and get my knees wedged in.
This is the Sportsman division?
This was the Sportsman division at Stafford.
Those were big, heavy cars.
Those were big, heavy cars. Yeah. And they had just switched to V8s.
Okay.
So I had a V8 in a car. But I only ran it. I didn't have a lot of money. We had more mishaps trying to bring the car to the track than we had because I was adamant to race. We tried tow barring it, and there was one disaster after another getting a car here.
Oh, so you towed it?
So we tried.
In the 70s, that kind of guys they weren't doing that anymore. That was kind of the tail end.
A kid that just didn't know any better. That the cars pulled so bad to the left, you can't flat tow.
Yeah.
It ended badly.
So you're 16. How much does a race car cost at that point?
If I remember correctly, I paid $300 for the car. And if it wasn't for Bob Wickup, the tech inspector, I think was Pete Zanardi, or Gerard. I can't remember the guy's.
Is that Pete Zanardi did tech too?
I don't think he did, but
Pete Gerard maybe. He was a tech man back then. There was no way that the car was legal because it was a water pipe car. But Bob Wickup
water pipe car.
It was made of water pipe.
Oh, it was physically made of water
Physically made of water pipe roll cage.
Well, that bend's pretty easy.
Yeah, and it was all bad. But Bob Wickup talked him into letting us run the car, and that we weren't going to go fast enough. And he was right. We didn't go fast enough. One of the things that I remember about putting that car together and being so adamant to go racing is Ben Dodge was racing a car at that time, and he was fielding a Sportsman car for Gary Ryan. And I bought my first tires off of Ben Dodge for that car. And I remember I couldn't go into pits, and he threw them over the fence.
Wow.
And I bought them from Ben Dodge. I remember Ben Dodge is a young kid then, and throwing me the tires over the fence.
Kind of ironic that the last guest we had in that chair was Ben Dodge.
Well,
just
that's
a couple
when I
weeks
thought
ago.
of it. I was watching a podcast, and I saw that Ben Dodge here, and I said, "Oh yeah, I remember buying the tires. My first set of tires came from him."
Wow.
So that was cool, but that was the teenage years, and then of course my lovely wife who's here today. I met my wife, and we stopped racing for a little while, but the itch never goes away. And I bought a Monte Carlo, and we started working. We were living in Springfield, and we bought a car, and we put it together. We built it ourselves. We had our own motors, and we came here. That had to be, I'm not even sure of the year, what year we came back here, if it was early 80s. It must have been the early 80s we came back here in racing, and we did okay. Same thing. We knew a little bit more. We had a little bit more money. My cousin Clayton was building my motors at the time, and we came here, and I think by the end of the season we finished in the top 5 a couple of times, and then we went to Riverside, and we ran the September Series, and we finished second in points in the September Series. And it was just kind of cool because they were like, everybody at Riverside was like, because we didn't run Riverside the whole year. We just ran there
for the
September Series because Stafford was done. So we went to the September Series, and everybody like, who the hell is this?
You're like, I live up the road.
Yeah, it's like, who the hell is this guy? Who's this? That's and we finished second one night in the feature, and I remember my wife was so pissed at us because it was a good race. We were going to finish second in the September series, and we were so bummed it was the last race of the series and we didn't win one. But we were always so close. Yeah. And we were so bummed out and so depressed, and she wanted to kick our ass because we were all being Debbie Downers, and you're like, you did second. This is your first year racing. You finished second, and it, ironically, that was when we bumped into. We were running against Chuck Doherty because Chuck Doherty started at Riverside that year, and he was same thing. He was first year, and he was running really well.
So. You're a teenager. You buy this car. It's a pipe car that's the pipes you put in the wall of your house.
Yeah.
How do you have any mechanical background? Have you? Because you said your father he was a mechanic or he had a shop. So is that how your background in being able to build these cars?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been cars for me all my life. It's been one of those things where my dad owned a garage in Agawam, and as a kid, I used to work in the garage. I'd go there. I wasn't in school. I was at the garage helping them, with everything and motor work and tune-ups and, so as a kid, I mean, even when I was 7 years old, I was working in a garage, cleaning the floors or doing something. And he had talked about putting a race car together. In fact, he had bought a Camaro, and he had talked about it. But when he started finding out how much money it was to do it, and we didn't have all the means and money to do it, so he just kind of put that aside. But I used to go. We used to do record calls. He used to tow for the town of Agawam, and it was in Agawam, so we'd have to sleep at the garage for record calls and go out on record calls in the middle of the night. It was very, very cool growing up in that kind of atmosphere, and I actually say I had the best childhood ever as far as that goes. And like say. We were avid campers. My father was an avid camper. Every weekend we'd be going camping, but he would still bring me Tuesday nights. We go to the Tuesday night Riverside shows. They used to have Tuesday night shows, so we go to some of those. Then we were going here on Friday nights, and so once that racing bug got into me, you're not getting it.
You don't kick it.
I've tried everything, and it doesn't go away.
So after that successful September in Riverside and Agawam, you come back the next season. What's the schedule look like? Do you focus a little bit more on Riverside Park?
Nope. We stayed here at Stafford. The second year, my buddy's company, Combustion Controls, was my sponsor. My cousin was still building motors. We won our first race that second year competing with our Monte Carlo. So we finally got a victory, and I think we finished 7th in points that year. And things really took off when I hooked up the year after that. I hooked up with John Mayberry and Mayberry Material Handling, and we still had the same car, Big Monte Carlo, and we were trying to do our own motors. And it wasn't until we got hooked up the following year with TA engines. We put because we had a bunch of engine problems the year that we tried to do it ourselves. My cousin ended up getting a job and had to go away, so we were trying to use some other people to do our motor stuff for us, and so we ended up hooking up with TA. John bought a TA motor, and after that we just had instant success. I think we finished second in points that year with John Mayberry with the smaller Monte Carlo. We went to the smaller Monte Carlo, and we were running against Phil Rondo and just the names are Tony Sylvester. There was so many good names back then.
Division.
It was a cool division. It was a blast to run. Chuck Doherty, of course, he ran in the division also. So we had great success running a late model once Mayberry come on board, and we hooked up with TA engines.
So you mentioned your first career victory at Stafford, and you started off the show by saying you were just enamored by the place as a kid. So what was that, that victory like, coming from that 7-year-old kid who saw the coupe to a victory at Stafford?
It was huge. It was probably like one of the highlights of my career was just getting a victory here. Finally, when after seeing all the people in Victory Lane, Bugsy Stevens, Jeff Bodine, Ron Bouchard, all these people in Victory Lane, and here I was in Victory Lane. It was unbelievable. It was a great moment. I know we partied all night. We got some pictures from, and it was funny. All back then, everybody had long, big, bushy beards on my crew that worked back then. It was a fun night. That was a fun night. Probably. The next highlight, of course, was winning the first victory with John Mayberry, because I believe our first victory that we had with him, we had twin features. We had a rained-out feature, and that we had to finish, and then we had the feature for that night that we had to qualify for. So we ran the first feature before we did anything, and I won that one. And then we came back the next night and qualified for that show and won that one.
Oh,
so
cool.
we won both of the shows. So that was probably another huge highlight. And some nights you just get those nights, it seems like the Red Sea parts
right,
for
you know?
you.
Yeah.
And you see, and because I love the handicapping system here, because it makes the guys that are higher in the points have to start towards the back. So it makes you have to race. So you didn't start second or third when you won races here. You started 12th, 13th, 14th. You were back there. And I remember after winning the first feature going, well, all I want to do is survive this next one because I'm going to be in the back or whatever. And it was just like there was one wreck or one incident after another. And it was just, they open the doors. I'm like, I might as well take this spot. And then boom, it opened up, take the other spot. And then I remember, I think I was running with Brian McCarthy for the win. And he was Mr. Sideways, and I was Mr. Smooth, and so I grabbed the victory from him and won the second one that night too. So that was probably the next highlight, because we won two features on the same night.
It's funny as the only, I feel like the explanation of like the night that everything just lines up. Every driver has a couple of those in their career, just like where you might be having a terrible season, but then just like there's a night where just boom, everything happens. You miss the wrecks, the car is good, and then
but it works the other way too.
Oh, the highs are high.
You have more of those.
Than not.
The highs are high and the lows are so low.
So low, right. And so we had that probably when we went to the Pro Stock division. You guys had hosted a couple of Pro Stock shows. And when I saw the Pro Stock show up here, I was like, wow, I was trying to talk John into one of those. And we went to one of those, but unfortunately the timing was really bad, because in the late 80s, early 90s, the economy really got tough. So we made the switch to a more expensive car that was quite a bit more expensive. And then we found ourselves and that was when you had to put 4 tires on a car. And we found ourselves in a position that we had to run with not the funds that we needed. And we ran the first year, I would say that was 91, we ran both cars. We ran the late model and the Pro Stock. And the late model was so easy, you'd just jump in that car and that car would go, and we wouldn't have to work much on it. The Pro Stock was a lot of work. And my first year, to be totally honest, I sucked. I crashed. I hit everything, spun out, did everything. So the second year was way better, and I learned a lot. And I remember John Rosati telling me when I went to the Pro Stock division, he says, I'm going to tell you right now, everything you learned in late models doesn't mean a thing. It's going to be like starting over when you go to this car. And he was right. He was absolutely right. It was like starting over. I had to relearn and rethink everything that I did in late models going to the Pro Stock. And second year we did good, but we just didn't have the money. We didn't have the motor. We didn't have the tires. And so that's when we decided that it was time to hang it up. I had two kids that wanted my attention too, so I felt that it was a good time. I think that was 92 was my last season racing here.
So you talk about 91, you have a late model, you have a Pro Stock, but also a pretty big win down in Pocono that year as well.
Yes, Pocono it seemed like every time I got a win, there was extraordinary circumstances. So the first year we went to Pocono was 1990. We went down there, and we went down there with our crew. In fact, we stole Billy Doherty that year to go to Pocono. So we were racing here, and our car looked pretty beat up. So we decided we were going to go completely through the car to go to Pocono, because we saw the kind of cars that went to Pocono. So we built a beautiful body for the Monte Carlo. Aero coupe, put the rear window in. I had a body man that was helping us, and it looked better than a Winston Cup car at the time. It was gorgeous. Go down to Pocono with 8-inch tires rather than the 7-inch that we ran here. Went down to Pocono that year, and all it did was rain.
Mm-hmm.
Rain.
Nothing has changed 30 years later.
No, it just rained and rained, and we went down there. We were staying in a tent camper. It kept blowing the door open all night. The rain was rushing into the camper. I had my 2 little kids with me at the time, and we went out for practice. I think we got 1 practice, and we got our heat race, and we started pretty deep in the pack. And when we were racing our car, we were just blown by all these cars, and these were cars that were coming from Spencer, Speedway, Shangri-La. They were virtually pro stocks compared to but the guys and the talent at Stafford, all of our guys at Stafford went down there with the cars I raced here, and we did phenomenal down there. It was like whatever Stafford and Thompson Speedway made you do for your car worked perfect for that 5/8 oval that they had down there. And so we ended up our heat race. We had started 17th in a heat race. We had got up to 4th in a qualifying spot, and it started raining. So the promoter that year said, that's it. The only way we're going to have this race is everybody's going to have to draw to see who's in a race. Now there's 200 late models down here for 34 spots. So you had to draw. Now, everybody knew that in our car. Of course, we went down there with the back window in it, which was a no-no. You couldn't have a rear window in the cars. But we did it just to kind of play head games with the competitors. So everybody knew the car. The car was gorgeous. It was probably, in fact, we got best appearing car. And, no, they took it away from us. We had best appearing car, but because we drew the number that was outside of qualifying, they sent us home. We lost best appearing car, and they sent us home.
So it was a random draw to get in the race.
Random draw to get in the race.
Ouch.
So when we went down in 91, we were running a pro stock. Yep. So we didn't have the time to work on a late model. So we bring our late model down. It looks basically like a abused trash can from a whole season of racing. I went totally opposite. I says, I'm not doing anything to the car this year. We spent all that time and money last year, and we got sent home. So we didn't do anything to the car. Car looked bad. It was really bad. John was even a little embarrassed. So we went down there with that car. We put our pro stock motor in the car and put the taller gear in the car because the pro stock motor could twist more, figuring it would give us an advantage. So we go out and practice that year, and we're out there and practice, and I'm going, this thing feels like it's going to fall apart. The motor's vibrating. We did have a bad wreck that week, so we had to have the motor out of the pro stock, so that's why we put it in. So evidently something wasn't right. We didn't know if it was the balancer, we bent the crank, or something was wrong with the motor. So we made one practice. I pulled it in and says, this ain't going to work. The motor's going to come apart. So we had to take the motor out of the car. We had to take the rear end out of the car because the rear end was for the taller gear. We had to put the Thompson rear in the car. So we had the car all apart. We didn't have a drive shaft. We had to send somebody going around here at Pocono looking for junkyards to get a drive shaft. We couldn't find a drive. So we found a drive shaft, and we finally got the car together for qualifying. And we go out there for qualifying, and it was such a great atmosphere because, like I say, there was 200. You're parked in the grass, in the pits, and not in the pits, but in the grass, in the corners at Pocono. And you get your car out there, and we're going out there, and now I got basically nothing on this car. I don't know what it's going to do. It's not even sure if it's jetted right. And we go out there, and we go out for a qualifying lap, and the guy in front of me decides to take an extra lap out there. So I have to go wide coming off of 4 to go around this guy that's coming in, and he messes up my lap a little bit. But I did qualify. I was in the top 20. I don't remember where it was. So since we qualified, they says, you can redo your lap. I says, you know what? I'm in the show. I don't care. At this point, I don't care. We got too much work to do anyways. So we got in the race. We started somewhere maybe 17th or 18th in the field, And it was just one of those. It was one of those tracks. There was so many of our local tracks, Riverside, Thompson, Stafford, that were in this one facility. It was long straightaways like Thompson. Turns 3 and 4 felt to me like Stafford. Turn 1 felt to me like Riverside. So
interesting.
It was very.
So it kind of was the perfect storm with the track layout. It was the perfect storm.
So, and I remember that everybody, and I used to explain Pocono as it was like racing. Turn 1 was like driving into a toll booth down a highway at 100 miles an hour. That was turn 1.
Like, 'cause it was narrow?
Very narrow. Go from 5-6 cars wide to 2 cars.
Was the front stretch on the front stretch of the big track?
Front of the big track. So you know how wide it is. Yeah. Well, the cars would get that wide. And I used to, and because all these competitors up here, I think just because of the fields of cars, how aggressive you had to be, turn 1 was my best corner because everybody would just kind of get scared of going into turn 1, and I'd sail it in on the outside, kind of like you do at Thompson. Mm-hmm. Thompson was the same thing. You know, if you see somebody starting to get a little shy about going in the corner, and you shoot by him on the outside. And that was Pocono, and that was my best move. And we motored up, and Levetri was going to win that race. He had a Mopar, and he was Thompson's big dog at the time. And he goes down a back straightaway, and I see the parts and pieces coming out from under the car and smoke, and I'm going, this is it. This is mine. And then who finishes on my bumper but Ricky Shawn, who was competitor here. So it was just very cool that all our competitors that I race with all year long were all the competitors I race with there at Pocono up front.
That's cool.
And to clarify, this is part of the Race of Champions weekend.
Race of Champions weekend. We did run Riverside and Thompson. They had qualifiers, but we couldn't get a qualifying spot, so we had to.
It's a big win.
It was a big win. It was, and it was not without, a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of work to get it.
Sounds like it.
And that's the best way to get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't come easy. We had to work for it.
And so, great. So now we kind of cover the driving career.
Yep.
So now, this is kind of something that I don't think a lot of I don't think too many people really know how you even got started with karting, with the Wild Thing Karts. So take us through kind of the earliest days of the Wild Thing Karts, the concept, the series. I mean, get us
how it came to be.
How
can I go from racing into karts?
I mean,
it seems backwards. It does seem the transition is backwards. But one of the things I didn't tell you about is as we were growing up and we became a father and a family, and I got out of racing. We did go-karts we had some property up in Munson, and we did a dirt track, and we had go-karts with all family.
Cool.
And that's our taste of go-karts came from that. We just ran on it, and we built our own stuff, and we raced go-karts. So when I got out of racing in '92, it was just we were kind of like my father always instilled in me, you don't bankrupt your house to go racing. Mm-hmm. So it was getting to that point. So I had to make the decision that, it was just becoming too taxing to stay in racing. So I tried to stay out of it for a couple of years, but then the next thing I know, I'm building microstocks, which are full-bodied go-karts, and they look like little dirt modifieds. And we ran them. We first started up at our property in Munson, and then we went to Whip City. We ran at Whip City. And then here's where the promoting parts come in. I turned it into a series. I stopped driving the cars, and I started promoting, and we ran at different tracks. Jolly Rogers Motorsports Park.
Jolly Rogers. Where is that? Where was that?
So that's between here and Sugar Hill Speedway. There was a place called Jolly Rogers Motorsports Park. It was a motocross track.
Okay.
But they had what they called a sideways track for motorcycles. Mm-hmm. And it was rough pavement with clay on top. Huh. And so we would go up there and run on dirt, and then we go to Sugar Hill, run on pavement, and then we ran Londonderry. We ran so many tracks, but I promoted a series.
Okay.
And we ran Pennsylvania, and I took them all over. I booked these events.
Did you build these cars?
I built a lot of the cars. I built not all of them, but most of them at that point.
And was this a car that that existed other places, or was it kind of like?
Yeah, it was in Pennsylvania. It was a microstock division, and we ran Riverside Park Speedway with the microstocks. We ran some combo shows with the Pennsylvania group that used to come up. We ran with them, and I mean, we'd have 30 microstocks show up. It was fun at Riverside. And in fact, we even after I stopped racing and I built the microstocks, we did a preview down here one night because we ran go-karts here before I even thought of go-karts. Jack put together the Manifourth Mile.
Yeah.
And when he first did that, he was looking for divisions, support divisions. So we brought our microstock down here, and we ran microstocks with the Legend cars
Didn't know that.
when they first started. And it was only maybe the first 2 years I think we did that, just as a trial thing. And then I think we ended up going to Whip City is what happened. I think we decided that we're going to run on dirt at Whip City rather than run here on the Manifourth Mile at that time. So that was kind of the go-kart start. And I went to Sugar Hill Speedway, and Archie Archibald, you must remember him.
Yeah.
He was here in the beginning at Stafford. He said to me, he came to me because I was building a microstocks. He goes, he says, I really like these microstocks, but he says, I need something for kids. He said, quarter midgets are too expensive. He says, and the champ karts that they have, the Sportsman champs, are just too dangerous for the kids. He says, I want something a little safer. And just at that time, I had already been kind of thinking about the same thing. And so I built him a prototype. And we went up there, and with that prototype, the first Tiger Sprint I built.
So it was a sprint. It was a Tiger Sprint.
Tiger Sprint. And we just put after the race was over at the end of the season, last race of the year at Sugar Hill Speedway, Archie says, we're going to run these next year. We want everybody, who wants to try them, come sit here. And we had a line of people, kids, to try them. So we put a bunch of test drives, and we sold, I think the first year we sold 6 cars, and it just doubled every year.
And so what is this, like 90s or
so
early
we were
2000s?
trying to think of a date because my first champion in a Tiger Sprint division was Jonathan McKennedy.
Whoa.
Wow.
Really?
He was my first
way.
champion. Him and his brother raced in that series, and it was 1999. I believe it was 1999 was the year that, right? That's what we figured, maybe a little bit more. Somewhere in there.
I did not know that. That's awesome.
He was my first Tiger Sprint track champion at Sugar Hill Speedway. And from there, the next year we went from 6 cars to 12 cars to 18 cars. It just took off. It was just something that there was that void that needed. And so the reason why is there a Tiger Sprint division? Why do I have these spec divisions? Is because most of the karting divisions out there, quarter midgets, champ karts, it's manufacturers put the emphasis on speed and safety second. And so this was what Archie kind of instilled in me. He says, I want somebody that's going to build a car that's going to put safety first, speed second. So there's a lot of things about my cars that are not made for speed, but they're there for safety. The steering is all in front of a driver's feet, where champ karts are right underneath their legs. They only have a fiberglass cone that protects them in a champ kart. I have tubes that come down, and the steering is all in front of the driver. And I run aluminum racing seats. I will not run plastic racing seats. I run aluminum race. So all these things are done as steps to make a safe car, but not necessarily the fastest car.
Right.
There's a lot of things I could do to make a faster car.
But it's spec, so it really doesn't matter.
And that's why we had to do a spec series, because as soon as you open it up to other manufacturers, it's only a matter of time before the cost goes up for speed.
And safety falls.
And safety starts to fall. Yeah. I'll never say there is never not a need for quarter midgets, champ karts. There's always a need. There's the more racing divisions you have, the better, because it just makes for a more well-rounded driver.
And so this is you start with the Tiger Sprint, it doubles, it triples, it grows. When do you introduce the other divisions, the Cubs and the Junior Outlaws?
So the Outlaws came in, of course, as soon as they started getting older. I believe Jonathan went from there. I used to build a fully suspended junior mini sprint that they ran at Sugar Hill for a couple of years.
A mini sprint on that. Wow, that's a small track for a mini sprint.
Well, 5th mile, but
was it
they only
like
had
a 270
they only
or
had
something?
a Tecumseh motor on it.
Oh, okay.
So it was all about not scrubbing speed out. But Jonathan, his father being open wheel, wanted this junior mini sprint. So we built some junior mini sprints. We only had like 11 of them, and that's kind of where the number stayed. So it didn't last, but Jonathan was a champion in that division. But we saw that we needed a cheaper car, less expensive, that was kind of the same thing as a Tiger Sprint, and hence I come up with the Outlaw. And the Outlaw is basically just 5 inches in every dimension bigger than a Tiger Sprint. So it'll incorporate a kid or an adult in a car. And so we came up with that at Sugar Hill Speedway, and we started with that. The Cub didn't come in till later when we had Pinnacle Raceway in Chicopee. We moved to Pinnacle Raceway, which was a small track just in Chicopee. And we raced there for a few years, and Paul Bovin, who was our tech inspector, he's the one that encouraged me to build the Tiger Cub. In fact, his son, Joe Bovin, was one of my first Tiger Cub drivers, along with Dylan Kopech. Dylan Kopech was one of my first Tiger Cub drivers. And they came in, and they used to have a mini kart thing that was plagued with, the mini kart was plagued with motor problems as far as...
That was a flat cart, right? Those are flat carts.
Open cart, where they'd fall out of the carts.
Yep.
The motor rules were so bad they were spending thousands of dollars on the motors.
For 5-year-olds.
For 5-year-olds. Yeah. So Paul Bovin says, you got to do something. Make me a smaller version of a Tiger Sprint. So hence the last car I make is the smallest car.
And so everything kind of revolves around the Tiger Sprint.
Yes.
You're either making them
Tiger
6
Sprint
inches
was the first.
larger or smaller.
Exactly.
That's why they all kind of look the same.
They all look the
same.
same.
So I want to back up, though. How, when you're designing this kart, the first one, the early days of this Tiger Sprint, how are you doing that? Are you just kind of like thinking about just, obviously you said safety is first, but like I can't even just, it just kind of it kind of looks like a quarter midget, but it doesn't at all.
Right.
It kind of looks like a champ kart, but it doesn't at all. So like, how does it kind of come together?
Well, and that's what I had to do is when I first, because I had built the microstocks, which was totally off the grid as far as like a go-kart goes, I had come up with a flex design, which you're aware of. There's a flex design that built in all my chassis because they're rigid cars, but they have to have
Explain
the
that to the listeners, what that means.
So most, like a champ car, is a rigid chassis. The roll cage is welded to the chassis. So it is a very rigid piece that you get. My cars are, the outer perimeter of the chassis is separate from the roll cage part of it. And it's welded in the center, but it's only clamped on the ends with flex blocks that allow the chassis to flex and move and twist a little bit, so it gives you a little bit better ride. So it's not quite as bone jarring. And gives you some more adjustability in the car, because moving the flex blocks, of course, will help the car. So I had been working on that with the microstocks. So when Archie came to me and wanted this Tiger Sprint, I knew what I had to do. I had to make something that looked like a quarter midget, more bars, more side bars, like say aluminum racing seat, and steering away from. I knew everything I wanted to do safety-wise. I knew, because one thing as a builder, it's got to be a peace of mind thing for me that somebody can put their kid in my car and they're not going to get hurt. My cars, I hate that, I got to knock on wood, because we're going into our 16th season and we've had no serious injuries, which is pretty phenomenal. I think our worst wreck in a Tiger Sprint, I got to give to Ronnie Williams. Probably took the nastiest wreck I've ever seen in a Tiger Sprint, rolling and then impacting the concrete wall
on the
main straightaway.
On the main straightaway,
coming off the corner, rolling and flipping the car and hitting the main straightaway wall. And he got up, of course, was dazed, but walked away from the car. So that's probably the nastiest Tiger Sprint wreck. And there's another name from Friday nights.
Endless,
and they're endless. The names are endless.
But so when you're looking at this car, you're putting it together. You're taking some of the stuff. The idea is that you were developing
from
the microstocks,
from quarter midgets. Even though I like the looks of the quarter midgets, but I wanted to keep go-kart components to keep it inexpensive. And that was the main thing. Keep suspension off the car, but it's got to have some.
That's the one thing that a lot of there's no really suspension in these cars at all compared to I guess the Champ cars don't, but there's other the quarter midgets, shocks,
mini cup cars, bandoleros. They all have some suspension in the cars.
And so you get to a point. Is there does the chassis change over time here, or is it kind of what is there now is what the first cart that came off the assembly line?
I would say safety things have come in, and be totally honest, I really didn't do a lot of safety upgrades till we came here to Stafford's, and I had to put up with you and the Casa Grandes and
we'll get there.
and all the names that are racing here and how hard that the racing became here. I had to make some safety improvements, but the basic format for the chassis has never changed. The Tiger Sprint being my first car, it upgraded probably 3 times. I made 3 modifications, configurations of the Tiger Sprint. So the first 20 cars were kind of my test bed for Tiger Sprints. So once I got that platform and I changed it to the Outlaw, that's pretty much what I built 20 years ago is what we're using today because it works.
So you find success at all these Northern New England tracks. You mentioned Pinnacle. Where does the marriage with Stafford come into play? How does that partnership come together? You've been here now for, like you said, 16 years.
Yeah.
Has it really been 16 years?
16, going into our 16th year.
Crazy.
It is crazy. It's crazy to think about. So it just that Stafford is Stafford. I don't think I put any track anywhere ahead of Stafford. It's just this is where it happens. This is where careers are made and braked is here at Stafford. This is the pinnacle of racing. This is it. Every place else, trust me, there's a lot of good tracks out there, but this is the model track for me. And it's basically my home. In the summertime, I think I'm here more than I'm home. I'm only 30 minutes away, but with racing Monday nights, and then now I'm racing with cousin on Friday nights.
Yep.
I'm pretty much living here. I'm here 3 days a week, and not just for a little time. I'm here a long time those 3 days.
So, talk us through how you end up coming to Stafford, though. So, how the story of how I understand, you're at Pinnacle, which was in Chicopee.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is a small track, kind of like.
They were a rental track.
Was it in like a parking lot kind of deal?
It started out. It used to be. It was it a bus company originally? No, they built cinder blocks there. That's right. It was a cinder block company, and they decided to build a go-kart track. This was as Whip City was still racing at the time, and so some guys stayed at Whip City, some guys went to Pinnacle. Once I got to the pavement, I liked the pavement, so when we went to Pinnacle, we started racing over there, and unfortunately, we ran probably 4 years over there, and out of the blue, we went to the banquet, and we heard rumors that there wasn't going to be no Pinnacle Raceway. So there was probably 50 or 60 racers over there that all of a sudden didn't have a home. Chris Kopak being one of them. Trying to think of some of the other racers. Well, Bovins were racing there at the time. They ended up going to Sugar Hill. But Chris says, hey, why don't we go talk to Mark? We still got the mini mile over there. Why don't we go talk to Mark, and why don't you see if you can run the show over there? And it's like, I don't want to do that. And he said, you really think you'll let us do that? So we did. Me and Chris hooked up a meeting, and we had a meeting with your dad, and he was like, yeah, no.
Yeah, he didn't like karts because
he didn't like karts.
They ran some karts here for a little bit. And, I mean, some open karts, and it was
bad.
A couple, there was some
bad.
injuries. Yeah.
Yes, it was not good. So he didn't have a good taste in his mouth from karting here. So, but I've learned over the years that you need to present an idea to your dad and let it be his idea when he comes back. Don't push him.
He listens to this podcast, you know.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm open with it, and I'm good with it now.
Yeah.
I understand that.
16 years, you figured it out.
I figured it out.
I still haven't. I've been doing it for 30.
Don't push him. You don't push him because you're going to be done. But you plant the seed, and if he likes the idea, he'll think about it, and then, and I'm sure Chris Kopech had some influence in the second.
I think part of it too was. I think Chris brought Dylan's car down for a test today here, and I got in and turned some laps, and I was like, "This is the real deal." I've never even driven. I didn't even sit in a go-kart. I don't think until I was I was 13, 14 years old, so I didn't drive anything. Yep. My mom was, no way, no. I did drive a 270 a micro sprint at a Whip City a couple times, but that was it. And Chris and Dylan came down. I thought you must have been here. Maybe not.
I don't think I was because I didn't know about that. So that might be the
I think
push.
That got it done.
That might have been the push to get
because I think there was just some question about the size of the track.
Yes,
you know,
it was
big. Very long straightaways, and we got in the karts that day. And I mean, I remember I didn't even have a fire suit on. My mom was not here, but
good thing.
But I think that was the turning point where the speeds the speeds are high, but it didn't. I think he got a chance to look at the kart, the seats. I mean, it was a full seat. I mean, a big part of the karting is the open karts are just. I mean, you just look at them, right? They're scary.
Oh yeah.
So you get a chance to actually see the karts that have been built, and they're great. So I think that was the
thing that pushed them over. So see, I didn't even know about the test set. So so the second meeting went a lot better.
Must have been in between readings then.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. And that's why I say I know Chris had something to do with pushing us over that hurdle so that your dad would let us try it. And then he let us try it. And I remember him saying, this is a trial basis. This is, this could be a one-year deal if this doesn't work out. And, for me, dealing with, as a racer, I always dealt with Mark as him, scolding us for doing this or doing that. Mm-hmm. And so now here I am, I'm working for your dad, and he's putting the pressure on that. And so the first night that we had racing here, I remember that summer, I think before we started racing, I was a mess. I was a basket case. I would break out in hives, have migraines. I'd be at Central and a migraine would come on, and I'd have to go hide in a closet somewhere till a migraine. I was a basket case because I didn't know if this was going to work. I had no idea how to run a whole facility like this.
Yeah.
So we come in here, and I remember the first night. Okay, we knew if we didn't get 70 karts in here, we were in trouble. So I wasn't selling a lot of karts, and I'm going, I don't know if anybody's going to show up. And lo and behold, I think the first night I'm watching the cars come in the parking lot, and they just kept coming. And I going, holy mackerel, look at all these cars coming in. And we had like 80 karts show up. And first night, I remember Stu Fern and his two kids. Yep. And it's like, where did they finding these cars? Well, they had been scouring the internet and finding cars. They found them up north, up at Sugar Hill Speedway, and I think it was one of those things where Sugar Hill Speedway was starting to scale back on their racing, so a bunch of cars were for sale. So I didn't know it, but there was cars out there, and people were buying them and buying used cars because I'm sure they were the same thing. Well, we don't know if this is going to last or anything. So the first year, like I say, when the first time we opened up the gate, a whole bunch of cars showed up, and I remember we ran, and I'm walking around the pits, and here I am, a nobody, and now I'm a promoter. Here I am
at Stafford.
At Stafford Motor Speedway, and I'm walking around the pits, and I'm seeing all the drivers from Friday nights checking it out, and I'm going, oh my God, this might be for real.
Wow. And
your dad saw the same thing.
Yeah.
Because he said, I remember him pulling me aside, and he says, this may be something that's going to work.
So I think now we have 7 classes on a Monday night, roughly. I think. What year 1 look like? What did you had 70, 80 carts that first night? How many classes?
We built by the end of the season. I think so. Our first sponsor was Dent Wizard. Was our first sponsor of the series, and he was somebody from Pinnacle Raceway that came in and said, "Look, I'm going to give you some sponsorship money," and we bought a lot of stuff from Pinnacle. To the amp and the speakers that I use today are from Pinnacle Raceway. I bought them from Pinnacle Raceway when they closed, so that I could run the series. So he gave me money to buy all the stuff from Pinnacle Raceway when they closed, the scales, and we bought a lot of stuff from them. The scales we use today, I bought from Pinnacle Raceway. So we bought a lot of the things from there, and they were my first sponsor. Our first year was needless to say very stressful. It was a stressful time for me because, I'm not just a first-time promoter, but most of the people that are racing there are racers themselves that have come from racing or racing families. And now I have to be the one to tell them, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do it.
It's hard, isn't it?
It was very, very difficult. It was a very trying year, and it was a very trying year because your dad was also wanted his kids in a racing series.
It was fun.
It was a fun time. It was, and so the next few years, we did run open karts. I don't know if you remember, we had open karts.
There was a lot of them. There was a good amount of them.
We had, I think our highest number was 118 karts signed in.
On the first year.
In the second year, I believe. We opened it up a little bit more, and we brought in the open karts. And there was so many open karts here. It was crazy. They were coming from New York and Pennsylvania. But they're also the most dangerous and fastest karts. So we ran those for quite a few years, and we decided that the open karts had to go. There was just, we were running people to the hospital all the time.
You didn't need it. Yeah.
We didn't need it. Even though it was hard to get rid of, there was probably 30 of the karts that were coming here were flat karts. So even though it was tough financially to get rid of them, it was the smart thing to do. It was a direction we had to take.
I think the first season was, from my perspective as a 14-year-old kid, an amazing success because Junior Outlaw racing was like, there was 25 karts.
It started off big,
there was
and it's still
B-mains,
big.
right?
There
was B-mains.
And there were B-mains this year.
Yes.
And you run down the roster of that first season, you can, me, David, Dylan Kopak, Hines is in there. I'm trying to
Rocco.
The Roccos.
What was his first name?
Jesse.
Jesse Rocco. Even his sister raced a little.
Trying to think of some of the other
Horton.
The
Hortons.
there was some crazy racing, and the engines were still those didn't have the animals in there yet, so they were such a momentum car, and they still are, but there was even, I think even then it was even more because I think the speeds were a little bit lower, so that it was like Talladega.
So in that time, to start off and Peter Bertante,
Peter Bertante,
he always said that when he got into racing here at Stafford, he said this is NASCAR. He says I feel like I'm running in the Winston Cup division. I'm racing with all experienced racers and racers' kids, and they're bolting on 4 tires a week, and the racing is so intense. He says, this is NASCAR. And he said, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it is. And it was just, it was a very trying first couple of years because it wasn't like starting and building something. Boom, here it is.
Yeah.
And it was right off the bat. It was huge and it was big. And you had some of the best racers with their kids racing in a series. I remember Frank Rocco coming in and buying 3 cars. He says, I need 3 cars. Frank was not a guy who liked used stuff. He did not like you. Neither did Kenny Horton. Yeah. Kenny Horton was the same way. I want 3 cars. And I would take time off from work to get these cars built. I would get these cars built and get them delivered to him as quick as I could. And the cool part is those cars are still racing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
16 years later, those cars are still racing here today.
And so that's a good point is How many karts do you think have been built over these, I guess, beyond just the Stafford years? How many karts from that first Tiger Sprint to yesterday, right? I mean, imagine you're building cars now.
I don't tag the Tiger Cubs. I didn't tag probably the first 20 Outlaws because I didn't know if when we did them at Sugar Hill if it was going to go. But I just tagged the last car I built was 245. So there's well over 300 cars that I've built that are out there.
And what's interesting is they're all. I mean, it's not like an old car is no good. They're all. It's just. They're pretty bare bones. There's nothing too advanced about the technology. So you can get Kart 25 and be totally fine.
Yep, you're fine. The only things that are starting to age out are Tiger Sprints. They're a little bit softer material that I build them on, so reflect because they're a lighter person in a car. So I use chromoly, which is a better grade tubing for Outlaws. But Tiger Sprints are starting to age out where if they're starting to get to the point where they're 10, 12 years old, they're not any good anymore. They've done all the flexing they can do. But the Outlaws, those things they just last forever.
Yeah.
Absolutely last forever. And we started touching on taking off work to do the racing, which has been, I've been at the same place for 42 years, so they do give me a lot of grace, and they put up with my racing stuff. And I remember one night racing here in them first couple of years with you and your brother and the Roccos and the Casagrandes, and I remember this enormous wreck coming off of turn 2. You guys flew in, and I think you went over the top of all of them, crashed into.
Yeah, almost cleared the Jersey barrier.
Almost cleared the Jersey barrier, and there was like 7 cars wrecked in there. And I remember taking a week off from work to repair all these cars. And I remember Rick Casagrande, I think this was the same wreck on your brother's car, was scaling his car. And I had to put a front axle in a car that was bent in. I remember Rick calling me up and going, this car is bad. You did something wrong when you weld it together. It's not scaling right. And so I says, oh, man, what did I do? I know I did a lot of work that week. I wonder if I messed something up. So I shoot over to his house where he had David's car on the scales over there. And they had the leads backwards for the left side and the right side. They had them backwards on the scales. Then I switched the scales over and he went, oh, no, that's way better. But I remember that being one of the weeks that I ended up taking off from work because we had so many cars wrecked. But that was the norm back in that first couple of years. The racing was unbelievable.
Yeah.
From the Portantes, I'm trying to think of all the names.
The kid who won the championship was Bird. What was his first name?
Harry Bird.
Harrison Bird, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's from Australia, and he was racing. He started at Pinnacle, and his dad was the one that worked at Den Wizard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was a pretty good driver.
He was a very good driver. Yeah. The nicest family in the world. That's the one thing is that I got to say. This has been one of the greatest experiences I've had because I meet some of the nicest families. It's unbelievable. I mean, it seems like racers have those type of families that are really dedicated to family and like racing, and especially kart racing, because they can do it with their kids.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You're not handing your kid off to a coach. You're the coach, which isn't always the best thing in the world. I'm sure you've experienced that. It has its ups and downs, but it's still a great thing to get into with your kid because you get into it with your kid, not some other coach or another team. This is your team, your family unit. And a lot of them race as a family unit. They're brothers, they're sisters.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about all the talent that's come out of here.
Oh, my God.
2 decades.
You look down. I mean, I didn't even know about John McKenney, so that's really cool. But you look at the roster at Stafford on Fridays now. You're here every week. You see the drivers. What are you thinking to yourself? So you're like, wow, like Ronnie Williams, right? He's a 2-time SK modified champ. He's the first kart driver to go from I think he started in sprints.
Yep.
From a Tiger Sprint to a 2-time SK champion. And I mean he has an open, he has a couple wins on the open shows, he runs them. I mean that progression, that's got to be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's not only the stuff at Stafford, because even like Peter Pertante races Indy cars.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that it's just happening here. When they go from here, I have Eric Penza, who is working on a crew down. He's a Winston Cup on a crew, and he's running for. Is he working for the truck team? No, he's actually with the Cup team right now. So it's really cool to see all these directions that the kids will go from here, because it's not just being a race driver. This opens the door for you to go many different avenues of racing. So many avenues open in racing. And girls today, it's nothing to see.
Oh, like
cadence. A third of my pits is full of girls that are racing here now. And they're not just girls racing. They're girls that are competitive.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a couple times in the show, kind of why Stafford has so many more female drivers.
They do. I don't know what it is.
There's nowhere else.
Nowhere else.
And I think part of it is definitely because karts. Good
drivers.
Part of it is definitely because the karting is so accessible.
Yeah.
That's part of it. And we're just, how many girl drivers are in karts now? I mean, it feels like you walk through the pits, it's like half. It's
I would say that's why I say a third of our field.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And even another. So we were going over some of our people that have raced here in our series. Ryan Priest has raced, signed in, raced in our series in the beginning.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We had, and back in the Pinnacle days, Heather DeRocher, which is Ryan Priest's wife, was a Tiger Spring champion at Pinnacle Raceway.
Wow.
So we had Kyle Spencer, who is not racing here anymore. The names are just, it's
Teddy
endless.
Hodgson, Mike Jr.
Yeah, Mike Flynn.
Tyler Hines, Flynn.
Yeah. And right now we got the Fern kids that are both running good.
Yep.
Alexander, was she a champion? I'm not sure if she made a champion.
Bunch of wins at least.
Bunch of wins here. Bunch of wins in the Outlaw Series.
And I think we really saw it, 2 years ago when you were the Grand Marshal, you and your family here for, I believe, the fall final, and we had all of the alumni from Wild Thing Karts down in Victory Lane behind you guys to give the command and to give the send-off to start the day. And I felt like half the pit area, or more than half the pit area, was down there. You know, Amanda West and Mike Christopher Jr. and all the other names that you guys have listed the last couple of minutes. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, I'm kind of awestruck when I look at the field now to see, all the people that are racing here on Friday nights in some form or another. Some are just working on crews, but they all started Monday nights in kart racing.
What do you chalk that up to? That ability to go from the Monday series to Friday?
So for me, it kind of would be the thing that I would do if I was a kid, is come here racing on Monday nights because it's affordable.
Yeah.
So I always get this question for a new competitor coming in. A parent will ask me, so what's this going to cost me? What's the most expensive thing for racing? I said, well, the good thing is once you buy the car, we don't need up tires, we don't need up motors. You're pretty much good for the season. Your biggest cost is getting in the gate. I have to pay for the show.
Yep.
We have to pay to do our own racing. So that is your biggest expense. So for me, if this was something and I wasn't doing it, this would probably be something I would be doing. I'd be kart racing on Monday nights if I wasn't a promoter, because it's an affordable thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do.
And so now we're in our 16th season here, which is incredible. Feels like
it is
yesterday, right?
It does. It's a blink of an eye.
What does this new season look like? I know there's a new sponsor on board.
So even with all the hard work and the trials and tribulations of COVID last year, we had 8 races, and it was very successful.
Sunday show was amazing.
The Sunday show, I think we broke a record for our attendance in the pits.
Really?
Amazing.
How many karts were around?
So we had just over 80 karts, right? I think we had I keep looking if nobody can see my beautiful wife's over there hiding in the background, making sure I'm saying the right things. But we had 80 some odd karts there, and we had 600 people in the pits. Yeah, 500. Yeah, somewhere between 500 and 600 people in the pits, which is phenomenal for end of year race, last race of the season. It was great. It's good to see that it seems like it's going in the right direction. That, we had some tough years where, we kept dropping divisions. We dropped the Champ Kart division. We dropped the Open Kart division. Yeah. So we kept losing divisions, but the numbers are staying pretty much the same. So we're going along. And last year, I would say, even though we only had 8 races, was one of our best years. We had a fantastic year for 8 races. The racing was great.
I was going to say, some of those Senior Outlaw and Junior Outlaw features on Monday nights, holy cow.
You feel bad. I was sending Senior Outlaws home. There was so many cars, and we do manual scoring, so we can't have a lot of cars out there because my girls and boys can't score that many cars, more than 18 cars. So I was getting 24, 26 car field. Cool. I was sending cars home, and that haven't done that since the first few years that we started. So it was good to see, and this year I'm building a lot of cars, and me and my Friday night driver, Alina Bryden, we're working at home building cars and getting ready for this season, and I probably built more cars this year than I built in the past 3 years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
New
great
cars.
to hear.
There's none out there. There's just nothing out there right now.
And so if somebody was looking to get involved, how would they go about that?
Just call me. I'm it. I'm the one-stop shop, from the safety gear to the cars, to learning about the series, and calling me up at home. And
and they can check out the website too to get your number and your information.
And just call me. I'm the one-stop shop. That's it.
It's awesome.
Where'd the name Wild Thing Karts come from?
So when I built the microstocks, my dad drove the first one I built. He was my test pilot. So that was the first thing that they said, man, what a wild-looking thing that is, because it had a modified kind of body on it. And it was a go-kart chassis. And I says, that might be a good name. So we came up with Wild Thing Karts. And then, of course, when we came up with Wild Thing, just the Tiger Sprint seemed to go with the Wild Thing.
Yeah.
So it was Tiger Sprint. And then the Outlaw, of course, the Outlaw was just something we wanted to try and reference, the Outlaw series sprint car. But so we called it the Outlaw, our big chassis, the Outlaw. And then, of course, the Cub, we kept it all and tried to keep it all in the animal name.
And this is something we kind of totally skipped over, was the charity racing that we did for a couple of seasons, where some of the best drivers in the country got in. I think they were Junior Outlaws, I believe.
No, they were Senior Outlaws.
They were Senior Outlaws.
But some converted juniors.
That must have been
seniors.
pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, because we had Teddy Christopher, Bobby Santos Jr., Ryan Priest.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of names, and we did up the wings. I still got some of the wings at home from all the drivers that we had.
I think Keith Rocco, he won the race in question.
In question, yep.
I think I called him out on that one when he was on the podcast here. He's the only guy who would cheat in a charity go-kart race. I mean, it doesn't surprise me one bit.
I'm going to have to watch that
one. So they can, folks can find you. You have a Facebook page.
Yep.
A website.
Yep.
What's the season look like for 2021 right now?
Okay, so we just got the green light. We're going to put our schedule together. We are looking at doing another charity event this year, but we're going to do a little different angle. We're going to do kids' electric cars. And we're going to have adults driving them we're putting a charity race together. So
like the toy car.
Toy cars, toy electric cars that they're going to have to sit in and find a way to fit in them, and we're going to do a charity event with the electric cars this year. It seems like electric cars is the big thing now, so we're going to put a charity event together with that probably mid-season.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Be interesting.
And opening day planning around May, you think?
Yep. We have to kind of keep it an open window kind of thing. We usually have our first practice the week after the Sizzler, but we always keep that open just in case the Sizzler gets rained out and we have to get bumped, because the big stuff is still priority here. So, but then we go right into our Monday night schedule once we start in May and after the Sizzler.
And a new sponsor as well, if you want.
New sponsor. We have Tick Mike jumped on board this year. He got involved in racing last year. We talked all summer long, and then he just as the season ended, October, we talked and we decided to put something together, and he's going to come on as our title sponsor, and help us out this year, which is great for me. It takes a lot of load off my shoulders to have to go out there and seek all. What I used to do is go get a bunch of small sponsors to help, because I don't think people understand. I can't even imagine what it takes to run a show on Friday nights, because just the scale that I work on Monday nights is, I think, a lot. It takes a lot.
It's controlled chaos, right?
Yes, it's controlled chaos.
Controlled is rare. It's not always controlled.
Not always controlled.
Somehow,
do
though,
the best you can.
Somehow, though, at the end of the night, when the race is over, this is how I feel. You're like, all right, it actually
so bad.
It actually worked, and then you're like, oh shoot, 6 days till the next one.
That's right, yeah, that's the way it is. You take that deep breath and you go, it actually wasn't that bad, but yeah, we can't stop.
Go.
You got to go forward. And we used to have our family fun nights. I think that was probably the most stressful thing that I used to do. Was we used to have the family fun nights down here. It was so much work. It was exhausting.
But the kids had fun.
Oh yeah, I had fun.
There you go.
We used to have a blast on those family fun nights, but it cost a lot of money.
Yeah,
it was a lot of money, and it was great when we had the flat carts here, because there was 30 of them that used to sign in every week, and they bring people. So when we lost them, that was a big financial hit that we took when we lost the flat carts here. But we just had to do it. I think that last year, one of the Midford boys backed into the barrier, and he shattered his elbow in the open cart, and that was it.
Scare me. Yeah.
I talked to your dad, and I said, we gotta. That's enough. We're done. We can't do this anymore. We don't need bad press. You know, and I built my divisions for reasons for safety, and it just didn't fit what we were trying to do.
Well, we're glad you came on the show here. We enjoyed this, and we're thankful to you, Sandy, and the whole family for continuing the Karts at Stafford. It's been, I think, great 16 or these great
going into our 16th year,
15 seasons.
Yeah.
We love all the talent that comes out of there too. So we enjoy kind of talking about the ladder that goes from the Cubs all the way to the SKs. So we appreciate it, and we're glad you came on the show with us.
Yeah. I just want to give one shout out
for sure
to our one competitor that's still racing with us today, that raced back the first days that we started here, is the O'Sullivans. They still race here with us, and they started the first season that we started racing here. So they're probably our longest tenured member of the series. So I want to give a shout out to them as they keep coming back.
And still finding success.
Success.
Absolutely. Wade, thanks for joining us.
Okay,
and
thank you.
We'll see you on Monday nights all summer long here at Stafford Speedway.
Not going anywhere.
Perfect.